They told you to fit in, to be quiet, to not speak too loudly, not dream too big, not rattle the cage. They trained you slowly, silently, to fear disapproval more than regret, and they called it safety, they called it wisdom. But what they never told you is that the moment you begin to care what they think is the exact moment you give away your power. You were not born to ask for permission, you were born to create, to forge. To build a life that doesn't beg for validation. The greats, those names etched in time, Carnegie, Lincoln, Edison, Jobs, they weren't admired in the beginning, they were ridiculed, they were doubted, they were told, you can't. You shouldn't. Who do you think you are? And yet, they kept going, not because they had thick skin, but because they had clear vision, because they understood a simple truth: if you let the world define your worth, it will bury your soul beneath its insecurities. You cannot live fully and freely while handcuffed to the opinions of the small-minded, because most people will never understand your mission. Not because you're wrong, but because they've already given up on theirs every time you hesitate. Because someone might judge you, you trade your future for, you sell your fire for their approval, and you lose something you don't get back: time. What would your life look like if you stopped apologizing for your hunger? If you walked into every room, not wondering if you belong, but knowing you do, if you stood at the edge of your ambition and jumped, without asking for applause, there is a storm inside you, waiting to be unleashed, but it's been muzzled by fear, by shame, by the heavy chains of what will they think? Listen to me, they don't think, not really, they react. They project, they point fingers at others so they don't have to look at themselves. And every time you let their voices govern your choices, you live their life, not yours. The world does not reward the obedient, it rewards the bold, the relentless. They told you to fit in, to be quiet, to not speak too loudly, not dream too big, not rattle the cage. They trained you slowly, silently, to fear disapproval more than regret, and they called it safety, they called it wisdom. But what they never told you is that the moment you begin to care what they think is the exact moment you give away your power. You were not born to ask for permission, you were born to create, to forge. To build a life that doesn't beg for validation. The greats, those names etched in time, Carnegie, Lincoln, Edison, Jobs, they weren't admired in the beginning, they were ridiculed, they were doubted, they were told, you can't. You shouldn't. Who do you think you are? And yet, they kept going, not because they had thick skin, but because they had clear vision. Because they understood a simple truth: if you let the world define your worth, it will bury your soul beneath its insecurities. You cannot live fully and freely while handcuffed to the opinions of the small-minded, because most people will never understand your mission. Not because you're wrong, but because they've already given up on theirs every time you hesitate. Because someone might judge you, you trade your future for, you sell your fire for their approval, and you lose something you don't get back: time. What would your life look like if you stopped apologizing for your hunger? If you walked into every room, not wondering if you belong, but knowing you do, if you stood at the edge of your ambition and jumped, without asking for applause, there is a storm inside you, waiting to be unleashed, but it's been muzzled by fear, by shame, by the heavy chains of what will they think? Listen to me, they don't think, not really, they react. They project, they point fingers at others so they don't have to look at themselves. And every time you let their voices govern your choices, you live their life, not yours. The world does not reward the obedient, it rewards the bold, the relentless. Selfish, crazy, let them, because here's the paradox: the less you care about what they think, the more they'll begin to care about what you do. People don't follow the timid, they follow the convicted, the ones who say, "This is who I am, and I will not shrink to make you comfortable." This world was not built by the agreeable, it was built by the unreasonable, by the defiant, by those who heard, "That's impossible," and responded, "Watch me." So let them misunderstand you, let them doubt, let them whisper, "You're not here to be understood, you're here to be legendary." And legends aren't voted into greatness, they seize it, they chase it when no one is watching, they build it when no one believes. They endure the mockery, the rejection, the silence, because they know, when the world finally wakes up, it won't matter who laughed, it will matter who built, who bled, who dared. So if you're tired of holding back, if you're exhausted from performing for an audience that doesn't even care, let this be the moment, the break, the crack in the wall where the light gets in. You don't need to be liked, you need to be free, free to move, free to speak, free to walk your path, even if you walk alone, because the truth is, the minute you stop caring what they think, is the minute you start becoming who you really are. Who you really are, that's the question that scares most people. because buried beneath the noise, beneath the performance, beneath the layers of societal expectation, is a force so potent, so raw, so unstoppable, that if you ever unleashed it without apology, the world would tremble. But instead of unleashing it, you've been taught to conceal it, to wrap it in politeness, to dilute it with humility. To compress your wildness into something tame, acceptable, marketable. But power was never meant to be polite, and you were never meant to live with the brakes on. Look at any great movement in history. Look at any revolution, any transformation, any shift in culture. And you will find a person who refused to bend to the expectations of the crowd, a person who stopped caring what others thought, and started living what they believed. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't driven by approval, he was driven by purpose. Edison didn't seek permission to fail 10,000 times, he was driven by vision. Tesla, mocked and ridiculed in his own time, lived for the truth, not applause. If you're still living for their claps, you're still their prisoner. But there comes a moment when the weight of pretending is heavier than the fear of being real. That's the turning point, the shift, the exact second where everything in your life begins to align, not because the world changed, but because you did. Clarity is not given. It is claimed, and claiming your truth requires a sacrifice. You must bury the version of you that was built to impress. You must let go of the masks, the watered-down dreams, the carefully curated image, because authenticity isn't crafted, it's uncovered. And the deeper you dig, the louder your real voice becomes. That voice, the one you've silenced in meetings, ignored in conversations, buried under social media filters. That voice is your compass, and when you begin to follow it without compromise, without consulting the opinions of people who don't understand your destiny, that's when your life becomes electric. You don't need to explain your vision to anyone who wasn't given your eyes. They don't see it. They're not supposed to, because it wasn't handed to them, it was handed to you. And your job is not to convince them, your job is to become it. They will feel it, eventually, they always do, but only if you stop looking over your shoulder, only if you stop shrinking to fit their definition of enough. Let me tell you something they won't teach in school: the people who change the world are the ones most rejected by it. Because transformation always starts as a threat, it unsettles. It challenges, it exposes the mediocrity of the masses, so don't expect support at the start, don't expect celebration in the process, don't expect the world to understand your fire when most of it is drenched in fear. Understand this: every breakthrough comes with a breaking of ties, of old beliefs, of identities that no longer serve the life you're building. You cannot hold on to their approval and your potential at the same time. One must go, so let it go, let the judgment roll off your back, let the whispers die in the distance, let the discomfort of being misunderstood become your sanctuary, because discomfort is not your enemy, it's your signal that you're on the edge, that you're leaving behind the shallow waters of conformity and diving into something real, real growth, real identity, real freedom. And yes, it will feel lonely at first, the path of power always does, but that solitude isn't emptiness, it's preparation. Because when you walk alone long enough, you stop being afraid of your own voice, you stop needing the echo of affirmation. And you realize something most people never will: you are enough without the crowd, you are enough without the likes. You are enough without the approval, you are enough even when the world is silent, because the real work, the soul-shifting, future-defining work, is done when no one's watching. It's done when you wake up early to study your craft, when you make decisions that confuse others but feel aligned to you, when you speak the truth even when your voice shakes, when you keep showing up when no one's clapping. That's what separates leaders from followers, builders from talkers, legends from the lost. So ask yourself, whose life are you living? Is it yours, or is it a stitched-together version of who they told you to be? Because if it's not yours, truly yours, then it's time to burn it down. To rebuild, to rise from the ashes of people-pleasing and step into the flames of self-possession. No more adjusting your dreams to fit their expectations. No more choking on your truth to make them feel comfortable. No more asking for permission to live fully. From this moment forward, you operate differently. You speak when it's inconvenient. You move when it's uncomfortable. You show up, not to impress, but to express what you were born to do. And the world, it will notice, not because you shouted, but because you became. Because power isn't something you talk about, power is something you embody. It's in the way you walk into the room without shrinking. It's in the decisions you make without explaining. It's in the life you live without apologizing. Let them talk, let them doubt, let them stay on the sidelines. You've got a game to win. You've got a game to win, and in this game, there are no referees, no rulebooks, no lifelines handed out to the hesitant. There is only the relentless rhythm of time. And what you choose to do with it. You don't owe the world an explanation for your urgency. You don't owe them softness while you're forging steel. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that makes them feel less threatened by your greatness. Because while they waste hours calculating the safest path, you're moving, you're deciding, you're acting. And that's what they fear most, not your success, not your confidence, but the fact that you chose yourself before they did. You see, mediocrity is a system. It thrives on mutual delusion, on shared compromise, and every time someone breaks out, dares to live fully, fearlessly, it cracks the illusion. It exposes the lie that it's okay to settle. So when they roll their eyes, when they tell you to be realistic, understand, they're not warning you. They're protecting themselves, because your courage reminds them that comfort is a slow death, and deep down, they know it. But not you. You didn't come here to blend in with the gray, you came here to set fire to the beige walls of expectation, to take what was handed to you and shape it into something unrecognizable, something yours, to create without apology, to speak without filter. To move without second guessing, let the others tiptoe, let the others negotiate with fear. You're done with that. You know now that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who has nothing to prove, the one who no longer needs approval to take the shot, because when you no longer fear their opinion, you're free to act with precision, no hesitation, no paralysis, just action, focused, clear, deliberate. And action builds momentum, momentum builds power, and power, true. Internal, unshakable power is what this world bows to. It's what moved nations, it's what built railroads, raised skyscrapers, turned vision into empire, and it didn't come from consensus, it came from one man, one woman, standing firm in a world of wind, unbending, unshaken, unmoved. You must become immovable in your purpose, not because you're stubborn, but because you're anchored, anchored in truth, anchored in discipline. Anchored in the knowledge that playing small serves no one, not the world, not your family, not your legacy, so drop the performance, kill the script, tear off the costume of who you think they want you to be, and show up as you, raw, unfiltered, uncompromising. Not everyone will understand it, most won't. But the right people, the right doors, the right opportunities will move in your direction like iron to magnet the moment you stop pretending. That's the paradox. You attract everything you were chasing the moment you stop needing it to prove your worth, because a person who walks alone, but walks with purpose, is more magnetic than 1,000 voices shouting for validation. They'll feel your silence louder than their noise. They'll feel your stillness as thunder, they'll sense that you've become something they can't control, and they'll either try to diminish it or follow it. That's leadership, not titles. Not resumes, but conviction without compromise, and understand this, there is a price. Freedom has a cost, and the cost is comfort, the cost is belonging, the cost is losing the crowd in order to find your own voice. But that cost, it's nothing compared to what you lose by staying silent, nothing compared to the slow suffocation of potential left unused. Because if you live your entire life fearing judgment, then you've already judged yourself as unworthy, and that ends now. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be felt. You are not here to be polite. You are here to be real. You are not here to seek comfort. You are here to rise. So rise, even if your legs shake, even if the room turns, even if the world watches with raised eyebrows and crossed arms, because every person who's ever changed anything, every soul that etched their name into history, did it while being doubted, did it while being laughed at, did it while being told to sit down, stay quiet, be reasonable, and they stood anyway, they rose anyway, they built anyway. So now it's your turn, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The world doesn't need more copies, it needs originals. And originals are never born from approval, they are born from resistance, from fire, from chaos, from the unrelenting refusal to play by rules that were never written for you. This is your moment to stop performing, to stop explaining, to stop adjusting your light because others haven't yet opened their eyes. Shine anyway, build anyway, speak anyway, and one day, the same voices that once questioned you will tell your story as proof that they once knew you, but you'll know the truth, they never knew you. Because the real you, the unfiltered, unshaken, undeniable you, was only born the moment you stopped caring what they think. The moment you stopped caring what they think was the moment you stepped through the doorway of your own power, and once you cross that threshold, you never go back, because something in you awakens, something ancient, something primal, something undeniable. It's the part of you that remembers. You were never made to be tame, you were made to carve mountains, to bend the arc of possibility, to turn invisible thoughts into physical monuments. But you cannot do that while apologizing. For your own existence, you want greatness, then you must let go of the addiction to being liked, because popularity and power don't live in the same house. You either chase approval or you command respect. You do not get both. The ones who change the game don't wait for the world to nod. They move while others mumble. They act while others analyze. They decide, not based on consensus, but on clarity. And clarity doesn't come from the crowd. It comes from silence. It comes from going inward, confronting every weakness, every lie, every layer of inherited self-doubt, until what's left is something no one can take from you. Do you understand the weight of that? No one can take what you build with your own two hands and your own resilient mind. No one can manipulate a person who no longer fears rejection. No one can shame a man or woman who already knows who they are. That is freedom. That is what makes you unstoppable. Not the money, not the fame, not the metrics, but the internal shift from performing to owning. You own your flaws, you own your vision, you own the silence, you own the storm. And when they try to pull you back into the cage of conformity, you smile, not out of arrogance, but out of understanding, because you've seen the other side, and nothing they say can compare to the roar of your own unfiltered life. Look around you. This world is built by those who refuse to listen, refuse to obey, refuse to shrink. Henry Ford was mocked for saying he'd make a car affordable to every American. Walt Disney was told he lacked imagination. Oprah was told she wasn't fit for television. Steve Jobs was fired from the very company he built. Yet here we are, still driving, dreaming, creating, imagining, on the shoulders of those who didn't care what the critics said. And that's the key. Critics don't build, they react, they observe, they judge, but they never bleed for what they believe in, they never sacrifice, they never live. You must choose your identity, builder or bystander, leader or follower, creator or critic, because you can't be both. You can't stand for something if you're still bending to everything. At some point, you must stop asking the world for permission to exist. You must plant your flag in the ground and say, "This is who I am. This is what I believe. This is what I'm building," and if they don't like it, let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them walk. You will keep rising, because when you detach from their opinion, you rise into your own standard, and that standard is forged in fire. It's built when you show up every day despite the noise. It's built when you keep your word to yourself. It's built when you do the work in the dark and trust that the light will come. It's built when you say no to what doesn't serve you, without guilt, without explanation. You no longer owe anyone comfort at the cost of your calling. This isn't arrogance. This is alignment. This is what happens when the mask finally falls and you look in the mirror and say, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I'm not." That's the moment of transformation, and from that point forward, everything changes: your pace, your posture, your decisions, your circle. Because when you raise your standards, the room gets quieter, not because you're unworthy of love, but because most people are afraid of depth, afraid of people who can't be manipulated with approval, afraid of someone whose self-worth isn't on the auction block. You are no longer for everyone, and that's exactly how it should be, because nothing great was ever built by trying to be everything to everyone. True power is selective. It knows its value, it knows its boundaries, it doesn't chase, it chooses. So from this moment on, choose yourself, choose your vision, choose the voice inside you that's been waiting for years to be heard. Let them misunderstand you, let them mislabel you, let them misread your silence as weakness, because soon, that silence will erupt, not as an explanation, but as a result, and results are undeniable. Results speak louder than arguments, louder than opinions, louder than doubt, because while they were talking, you were working; while they were watching, you were building; while they were laughing, you were climbing. And now you stand taller, not because you need to be seen, but because you've become something that cannot be ignored. This is the reward of letting go. You stopped needing validation, and you earned respect. Not the kind that's handed out in applause, but the kind that echoes in silence, the kind that's felt in your presence, your habits, your integrity. Because you no longer live by their rules, you live by your standard, and that standard demands more. More focus, more honesty, more ownership. You own the mornings, you own the failures, you own the responsibility of being fully alive, and in that ownership, you find freedom. Not the cheap kind of freedom they sell you on posters and slogans, but the deep, soul-carving kind that comes when you refuse to be owned by anything external. Not their judgment, not their praise, not their fear, their limits, their vision of who you're supposed to be. That version is dead now, gone. Buried under the weight of who you used to be, you don't chase ghosts anymore, you don't audition for acceptance, you don't apologize for being serious about your life, you're no longer interested in fitting in. You're interested in breaking through, because fitting in is the language of the mediocre, but breaking through? That's reserved for those who dare to confront themselves. You've confronted the fear, you've stared down rejection, you've stood in the fire of ridicule, and you're still standing. Do you realize how rare that is? Most people collapse the moment they're questioned, most people retreat the moment they feel resistance, but you understood that resistance is proof you're in motion, proof that you're climbing, proof that you're no longer waiting for a seat at their table, because you've decided to build your own, and you'll fill it with warriors, with creators, with minds that don't shrink in the presence of greatness, but expand in response to it. Because once you stop caring what they think, you stop attracting people who want to keep you small, you start drawing those who reflect your fire, those who challenge you to be even sharper, even clearer, even bolder. That's how legacies are built. Not in isolation, but in alignment with those who've also chosen themselves. And yes, it's lonely at first, you will lose people, you will walk through chapters of silence, you will grieve the version of yourself that settled just to feel included, but on the other side of that grief is greatness, not comfort, not safety, but greatness, the kind of greatness that builds empires out of doubt, that turns pain into strategy. That turns pressure into diamonds, that turns You're crazy into a brick in the foundation of a life that makes people question their own limits. You are becoming that person, the one they tried to hold back, the one they tried to label. The one they doubted until they couldn't ignore you. You are becoming unstoppable, not because you're louder, but because you've made an unshakable decision that your life will be yours, your vision, your voice, your values, your victory. So keep moving, keep building, keep choosing discipline over distraction, purpose over popularity, legacy over likes, and never again dim your light to soothe someone else's insecurity, because you were not put here to be soft for others, you were put here to be solid for yourself. Let them feel your silence, let them feel your focus, let them feel the ground shift beneath them as you rise without fanfare. Because the world doesn't need another voice in the crowd, it needs a signal. You are the signal, so stand up, stand tall, stand true, and let the world adjust to you. There's a moment when you stop asking for directions from people who've never been where you're going. A moment when you no longer outsource your intuition to the opinions of the unqualified. And in that moment, something shifts permanently. It's like waking up from a long, slow sleep, your eyes clear, your spine straightens, you feel your heart beat again, not as background noise, but as a war drum. This is your life, and you're finally showing up for it, fully, not the filtered version, not the socially acceptable version, the raw, focused, unflinching version, the version that doesn't ask, what will they think? But instead asks, what am I here to do? Because purpose is louder than people, and when you lock into it, really lock in, the chatter fades, the noise becomes distant, and your focus becomes violent in its clarity. You start saying no with zero guilt, you start walking away with zero explanation, you start creating, building, moving, not because you're chasing success, but because you're answering a call, the call that was always there. Buried under layers of hesitation, doubt, and distraction, a call that says, you were made to lead, you were made to build, you were made to set fire to mediocrity. And that fire doesn't apologize, it burns what isn't real, it clears the space for what's possible. You no longer beg for space at their table, you build the table, you choose who eats, you choose what gets served. Because when you stop caring what they think, you begin to live according to what you know. And what you know is this: most people are playing not to lose, you were born to play to win. That means discomfort, that means discipline, that means being misunderstood, criticized, questioned, but never broken. Because you've already seen the cost of caring too much, dreams delayed, gifts buried, years wasted. Not anymore, that chapter is closed. You're in a new season now, a season of full ownership, a season where everything you do either aligns with your vision, or it doesn't happen, period. No more explaining, no more negotiating your value, no more shrinking so that others feel comfortable. Comfort is the enemy of greatness. Let them be comfortable, you stay hungry, let them feel content, you stay restless, relentless, unreasonable in your pursuit, because the people who change history aren't reasonable, they are obsessed, they are possessed by a vision, they are haunted by what could be. That is the fire that keeps them moving when no one claps, when the results are slow, when the pressure is high. That is the fire that keeps them from folding when everyone else does, because they stopped caring about perception and started worshiping progress. that is where you are now, unchained, unapologetic, unstoppable, and it's not that fear disappears. It's that you've learned to move through it, to act anyway, to speak anyway, to try anyway. Because your vision is stronger than your fear, because your why is heavier than their words, because your standards are higher than their opinions. This is what happens when you rise from the ashes of caring too much. You begin to carry power in your silence. You become dangerous in your stillness, not violent, not arrogant, just certain, and certainty is magnetic. People will feel it, some will hate it, some will envy it, some will follow it, but it won't matter, because you're not here to be followed, you're here to lead a life that leaves proof, to lead with principle, to lead with a spine that doesn't bend just because the wind blows hard. You don't adjust your truth based on trends. You don't betray your instincts for applause, you don't soften your vision to be liked, you harden your focus to be remembered. That's what this life demands. That's what this moment demands, not a watered-down version of who you are, but the real thing, the you that stands for something, even if it stands alone, the you that builds in the dark and shines in the storm, the you that doesn't wait for permission, because it was never needed. Let them talk, you've got work to do. Let them talk, let them whisper, criticize, assume. You'll be too busy doing to respond, too busy building the thing they said couldn't be built, too busy becoming the person they said you could never become, because while they watch, you move, while they doubt, you develop, and while they pause, you pioneer. Understand this, there is a price to becoming powerful, but it is not paid in their approval, it's paid in late nights, early mornings, broken pride, and relentless pursuit. The world is full of spectators. You were never made to sit in the stands, you were built to take the hits, to swing when your hands are shaking, to walk alone when the crowd walks away. There is no map to the top, because no one has walked your path before, and that's the point. You weren't meant to follow footsteps, you were meant to leave them, deep and bold, unmissable. This is what happens when you stop asking, what if they don't understand me? And you start asking, what if I never become who I was meant to be? That question burns, it haunts you in the quiet, it wakes you up at night, it stares you down in the mirror, because deep down, you weren't born for an average existence, you weren't built for mediocrity dressed up in convenience, you were built to matter, not someday, not maybe, now, and mattering means letting go of needing to be liked. Letting go of being polite to your own potential, letting go of making yourself small so others don't feel insecure in your presence. You are not responsible for their comfort, you are responsible for your calling. And your calling doesn't need a crowd, it needs commitment, it needs fire, it needs you, at your full capacity, not a diluted version trying to make everyone else okay with it. This is what every powerful person learns. When you take full ownership of your life, you will intimidate those still renting theirs, so they'll talk, they'll judge, they'll say you've changed. Good, change is the point. You were supposed to evolve, you were supposed to outgrow environments, expectations, even relationships, not because you're better, but because you're no longer pretending to be less. You're not arrogant, you're aware. And when awareness meets discipline, you become unstoppable. Do you think Edison waited for votes of confidence before he invented light? Do you think Lincoln surveyed public opinion before he held a divided nation together? Do you think Da Vinci checked his comment section before painting visions from another century? Of course not, because greatness doesn't come from consensus, it comes from conviction. Conviction doesn't care if you're misunderstood. Conviction doesn't need a committee. It needs clarity, it needs courage, it needs action, and the more you act in alignment with your deepest self, the more the noise fades, not because it disappears, but because you rise above it. You develop new ears that don't tune into the static of doubt, but to the signal of your destiny. This is the voice that whispers, keep going. They don't see it yet. But you do. It's the voice that says, you are not crazy for wanting more. You are courageous for going after it. And that voice, your own inner authority, becomes louder than every external critic combined. So now you walk differently, you speak differently, you breathe differently, not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped waiting, you started moving, you stopped explaining, you started creating, you stopped hiding, and now, you are becoming the person you once dreamed of, becoming the force you once feared. Becoming the answer to your younger self's deepest question, is it possible to live free? Yes, but only when you stop caring what they think, and start honoring what you know. There is a kind of power that cannot be inherited, it cannot be gifted, borrowed, or bought. It must be earned, through isolation, through rejection, through the sacred silence of doing the work with no one watching. It is the power of knowing who you are when no one else believes in you. it is the power of walking forward when the world tells you to turn back. It is the power of deciding, once and for all, this life is mine. And I will not die with my potential still in me. That is the power that lives in you now, because you've tasted what it feels like to betray yourself just to fit in. And you've made a vow, deep and unspoken, to never do it again. Let them laugh, let them question, let them wonder how you keep rising while they stand still. You don't owe them a blueprint, you don't owe them a single word of explanation. Your results will do the talking, your discipline will speak louder than your declarations, your transformation will echo louder than their critiques, because while they were watching, you were changing, not a surface-level change, not a makeover, a metamorphosis. You didn't paint over the cracks, you broke the foundation and built something unshakable. You rewired your thoughts, you recoded your habits, you tore down every false identity they projected onto you. And in the rubble, you found something priceless, your truth, not the filtered version, not the version that pleases the crowd, but the raw, wild, liberated truth of a soul that finally knows what it wants and refuses to apologize for wanting it. That's the shift. That's the fire no one can put out, and now it burns in everything you touch. Every move you make now carries intent, every word you speak drips with conviction. Every goal you chase is rooted in clarity, not insecurity. And every morning you rise is another chance to prove, not to them, but to you, that you are not done yet. Not even close. You haven't come this far to shrink, you haven't sacrificed, stretched, and suffered just to settle, you haven't climbed out of the cage of approval just to trade it for another. No, you've broken the cycle, and now you're free, and freedom isn't soft, it's sharp, it cuts through delusion, it slices away the lies, it doesn't tolerate halfway living, because you've seen too much, felt too much, grown too much. You know now what most people spend their lives avoiding. That comfort is a cage, that approval is an addiction, that pleasing others is the fastest way to forget who you are, and now that you remember, you're dangerous to limitation. Dangerous to excuses, dangerous to the version of you that almost accepted a lesser life. So no, you don't care what they think anymore, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You know what you stand for, you know what you're building, you know the kind of life you are crafting with every action, every word, every choice, and you are done compromising it. This is what it means to live without permission, to stand tall even when you shake. To speak your truth even when your voice trembles, to walk your path even if it means walking alone, because eventually, that path will inspire others to rise, not because you told them to, but because your example gave them permission to stop hiding. This is how revolutions start, not in crowds, but in individuals, one person, fully alive, fully awakened, fully detached from the need to be liked, one person brave enough to be free, and that person is you. So rise, own it, live it, burn the script they wrote for you and write your own, in fire, and never again ask, what will they think? Instead ask, what will I become if I stay true? Because that answer is your legacy. What will you become if you stay true? That is the only question worth answering, that is the only path worth walking, because everything else, everything that doesn't align with that truth, is just noise. Understand this now, you are no longer available for mediocrity, you are no longer on call for other people's comfort. You are no longer participating in the performance of playing small. You have tasted the truth. And once you taste it, you can never untaste it. It sharpens you. It sobers you. It separates you. Because while the world plays the game of appearance, you are playing the game of alignment. You are not here to pretend. You are here to create. You are here to expand. You are here to awaken, not just yourself, but everyone bold enough to watch you rise. Because when one person becomes fully themselves, they become a mirror, a fire, a call to action for everyone still asleep in their doubt. That's who you are now, not a follower, not a pleaser, not a puppet of public opinion, but a living, breathing force of nature, disciplined, clear, certain. You no longer care if they clap, because you're building something that will echo far louder than applause. You no longer care if they understand, because your purpose is not to be explained, it's to be expressed, and you no longer care if they accept you. Because you have finally accepted yourself. This is the moment, this is the line in the sand, this is the day you stop living in fragments, and start showing up whole. The opinions you once feared, gone. The criticism that once froze you, fuel. The distractions that once drained you, deleted. Because now, your mission is louder than your fear, your future is clearer than your past, your soul is stronger than their voices. And that's what makes you unstoppable. This is not a phase, this is not a mood, this is a full identity shift. You are not returning to the old you, that version is gone, buried with the need to be approved, validated, understood. You are becoming someone else now, someone rooted, someone ruthless, someone ready. Because when you stop caring what they think, you become what you were always meant to be, unfiltered, unchained, unshakable, and in that space, you don't just live, you lead. You become the proof that it's possible, that it's worth it, that it's real. You become the storm that never waits for permission, the standard that makes others rise, the one who decided to stop asking and started becoming. So walk now, not with hesitation, but with holy fire in your steps. Walk not as the person they expect, but as the force they never saw coming. You owe them nothing, you owe yourself everything, and now you know the truth. Freedom begins the moment you stop caring what they think, so take it, live it, be it, and never look back. In a world obsessed with approval, validation, and external acceptance, the greatest act of freedom is learning to stop caring what others think. This radical detachment is not about arrogance or coldness, it is about clarity, courage, and unwavering commitment to your true self. The power to live an extraordinary life begin. The journey starts with a mindset shift, a deep realization that your worth and potential do not depend on the approval of the crowd. Like Edison inventing the light bulb despite thousands of failures and critics, or Lincoln standing firm amid national division without unanimous support, greatness is forged in solitude, conviction, and persistence. Waiting for consensus or permission is the surest way to remain average. Instead, you must build the core. Belief in yourself becomes the foundation of your transformation. This belief is not born from blind optimism, but from a clear vision of what you want to create and who you want to become. You must own your desires and ambitions without apology or dilution. Letting go of the need to be liked or to fit in is essential, because pleasing others often demands sacrificing your potential and authenticity. Your responsibility is to your calling, not to the comfort of ennui. Clarity sharpens your focus and fuels discipline. With a clear vision, you resist distractions and negativity. You learn to ignore the noise, the whispers of doubt and criticism, because you have found your own inner voice. The voice of your highest self. This voice urges you to keep going, to keep building, to keep becoming, no matter how lonely or challenging the path. Discipline becomes your ally, turning daily action into unstoppable momentum. Purpose breathes meaning into your journey. When you stop caring what they think, you free your purpose from the cages of social expectation. Purpose drives you to show up fully, not for applause, but because your mission is greater than any external validation. This sense of meaning keeps you resilient through failures and setbacks, which are inevitable in any worthwhile pursuit. Resilience is born from understanding that obstacles are part of the process, not reasons to quit. Adaptability is another key lesson. As you grow, you will outgrow environments, relationships, and beliefs that no longer serve you. Change can be uncomfortable and even isolating, but it is necessary for transformation. Like a river carving its path through stone, you must be willing to reshape your life continuously to stay aligned with your truth. Flexibility in approach combined with steadfastness and purpose is what keeps you moving forward. Gratitude grounds you amid challenges. Appreciating the progress you make, the lessons you learn, and the strength you develop keeps your mindset positive and focused. Gratitude, learning is a lifelong commitment. The more you detach from external judgment, the more open you become to feedback that serves your growth, and the more resilient you are to criticism that does not. You cultivate curiosity instead of defensiveness, seeking to expand your understanding and capabilities continually. This openness is what separates those who stagnate from those who evolve into their fullest selves. Ultimately, the script's greatest lesson is that freedom and power arise from full self-acceptance and authenticity. When you stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What will I become if I stay true?" you unlock a force within that is unstoppable. This force is not fueled by others' approval, but by your own commitment to living a life aligned with your deepest values and highest potential. To live without caring what others think is to live without permission. It means no longer shrinking to make others comfortable, no longer hiding your gifts to avoid jealousy or judgment. It means stepping into the fullness of who you are meant to be, even when it scares you, even when it feels lonely, even when it defies convention. This is the path to becoming unfiltered, unchained, and unshakable. For everyone seeking to break free from fear and limitation, the advice is clear: focus relentlessly on your own growth, purpose, and vision. Build your inner authority so loudly that outside voices become background noise. Develop discipline that turns small daily victories into unstoppable momentum. Embrace change and setbacks as necessary parts of the journey, not signs of failure. Cultivate gratitude to keep your spirit resilient and learning to keep your mind sharp. Know that the need for approval is a cage disguised as comfort. True freedom is messy, intense, and lonely at times, but it is the birthplace of greatness. The moment you stop caring what they think is the moment you step into your own power. You begin to lead, inspire, and live on your own terms. You become proof that extraordinary lives are built by those brave enough to break free from the chains of external judgment. So take this truth to heart: your life's highest calling is not to please others but to become yourself fully. Every step taken in alignment with your truth is a revolution against mediocrity. The world needs your courage, your vision, and your authentic voice. Stop waiting for their permission, start creating your legacy. Freedom, power, and greatness await on the other side of caring what they think.